Okay, so today we're going to be doing something a little bit different, and it's some bad news for those of us who have bought into the 12 volt tool system from Skil, as well as the 20 volt tool system from Skil, as I suspect. Now, this is all just my observations, so I have no proof, and I could be completely wrong about all this, so you'll have to take this with a grain of salt. But at the end of the day, what my conclusions brought me to would be, yeah, I'm pretty sure that Skil is leaving the cordless tool market. Now, that doesn't mean that their corded tools are going to be going away, but as far as I'm concerned, the indications are that the 12 volt and 20 volt tools from Skil are, well, getting axed. And the reason for this would be they're not being restocked, and they all seem to have store clearance prices, and when you go into the actual brick and mortar locations, they all seem to be either completely gone or, well, the discounts are massive and way too big to just be holiday sales. Now, another tool lineup that also sort of got the axe, I believe, would also be the Flex 24 volt tool system. When you go into a Lowe's, all the displays are kind of empty or almost empty, and all the storage areas that would normally hold the, Flex tools are now full of DeWalt tools. So I'm pretty sure that the Flex 24 volt system is no longer going to be carried, at the very least, in the local brick and mortar shops, although it could still be carried online. I'm not sure on Flex. I'm not super familiar with that system. What I am familiar with would be Skil, and unfortunately, right before Black Friday, they started receiving massive discounts, which is actually good for the consumer, but not good for the long-term health of the brand. And by massive discounts, I mean massive discounts as in some of the times they'd be discounted 80%. I saw like the impact wrencher for a little while was selling for $20. The reciprocating saw was selling for $20, and that's just too big to be a holiday sale. That's clearance pricing, and unfortunately, I wasn't thinking, and I didn't realize it at the time, because if I did, I would have bought far more. Now, when you go into a Lowe's brick and mortar shop right now, you may find some of these things still on the shelves, but the majority of these items have now been, well, sold out, and, well, the ones that you do still see in store usually have little yellow clearance stickers plastered all over them. So, I think that's a pretty good indication that the tool system is going away. Now, some of the tool systems that I have not seen sold recently online were the electric scissor cutter. I haven't really seen that sold on Lowe's recently. I haven't seen there's some of the saw kits have also been discontinued, and quite frankly, I think it's also just a pretty good indication that the market is shrinking. I think there's a lot of retailers that are reevaluating what they carry in store, and unfortunately, I just don't think Skil was probably the biggest seller. Now, take this light. I purchased this light, and I purchased it when it dropped its price down to $30, and I purchased one of these lights. The price has since gone back up to $49, but unfortunately, there's an $80 delivery fee if you can't find it in store, so it's kind of a rip-off to begin with, but, that's just another little indication that, something's not quite right here. Now, sometimes during the holidays season, tools will, sell out, and, they have really good sales. But these aren't, holiday sale prices. These are tool clearance prices where, the stores aren't going to be carrying them anymore. They're discontinuing production, or, the contracts have been renegotiated and they no longer want to carry this particular brand. Unfortunately, when it comes to, individual retailers, I can see that happening, but when all the retailers that I currently kind of visit and check deals out on are doing the same thing, it's not a good overall indication that the market is going to continue on, well, selling Skil 12 volt tools. As you can tell from the pages I've been crawling through, there just really isn't much listed anymore when it comes to the Skil 12 volt lineup on the website. There used to be the individual products, and now it's just old, outdated toolkits that don't have the newest and latest generation of tools in them. And so I think that's another good indication that, the older ones are just, they're just not there anymore. And another thing that we noticed this particular year was that we didn't get the Skil, holiday tool lineup, get 2 batteries and a tool for free. We didn't get that. I think there was one day that deal appeared and then it disappeared just as fast. But there hasn't been any sort of in-store displays other than for corded circular saws for holiday special pricing, and everything else has just been, clearance. Now, they do have that little lantern. That's a fairly new item that was listed, but it's also been majorly discounted from $40, which was way overpriced, down to $14, which is the appropriate price. But it did have the clearance stickers on it in store, and I just don't think that there's much of a chance that they're going to continue on carrying them in stores. So, like the brushless sander here, that's now $34, was originally $60. This work light is by far my favorite work light. I love everything about this work light. I love the magnets. I love the hang hook. I love the rotating head. I love the weight. I love everything about this particular work light except for where the power button is located. But this work light is by far my favorite, and it's been discounted from $30 down to $19. And I did see it selling at one point for $8, which I bought 2 more at that point. So, it's just, it's one of those things where the prices just are dropping substantially, and I don't see them being restocked because of just how much the prices have been going down. So this multi-tool here, normally $70, $34. So that's half price. These are just too big of a discount for to be something that is, just for the holidays. And the fact that they're also getting the in-store treatment of being put into the clearance sections is just another indicator. So there are quite a few tools missing from the online website. I don't see any of the modern day drills or drivers or impacts or the current generation kits. The vacuum cleaner is no longer listed. The cutter is no longer listed. The circular saw is no longer listed. The jigsaw is no longer listed. There's just too many things that are no longer listed on Lowe's. But Lowe's isn't the only one doing this sort of a treatment. It's a little bit different, but Floor & Decor is also, or has, I should say, because I'm pretty sure they've all sold out at this point, gotten rid of all their 20-volt power core Skil tools. And if you go to their website, pretty much nothing is currently in stock on their website. They basically did the same thing Lowe's did. They dropped the prices down from $100 down to $32 on the majority of their offerings, and on some of their bigger tools that had bigger batteries that came with them, they dropped the prices basically by $3/4, from like $150 down to $50, or from like $120 down to $40. So they did some really big discount deals, and they're no longer in stock. So Floor & Decor was the other kind of a brick and mortar retailer that was all over the place that would have them locally. So that's another indication that the Skil tool lineup is going away. Another retailer that also appears, well, here, see, there you have in-store pickup possibility delivery. Yeah, none of this, it's out of stock. They've sold out. So, Floor & Decor, you may find something in your local Floor & Decor that got missed, but, they're done. Best Buy, who also sold Skil tools, has also axed pretty much all the Skil tools from their website. They still have 4 different options available, 2 fans, a light, and a 20-volt jigsaw, as well as a battery, but everything else is, well, sold out, 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 and sold out. And last but not least, the tire inflator, which is also sold out. So everything has also been discontinued from Best Buy's website when it comes to Skil. So, that's 3 large retailers that appear to be getting rid of all their Skil inventory, and it doesn't appear like they're restocking it because the product pages are disappearing. Now, that could just mean that, they disappear when it's out of stock and doesn't pop back up. But, even over on Amazon, the stock on a lot of these tools, while they aren't getting the major discounts, are still dwindling, and some product pages have been disappearing, and there are certain tools that you just can't find anymore, it seems like. And a lot of the stuff that's currently over on Amazon is sold by third-party sellers, or if it is sold by Amazon, is out of stock and won't be delivered till basically a month and a half from now. So that's another indication that something is going on here, and it's not a good indication of the overall long-term health of the Skil 12-volt and 20-volt tool lineups, which really is a disappointment, because while I've only been in the system for about a year, I really do like the 12-volt power tool lineup. I think that the tools are actually got plenty of power for a 12-volt tool. I'm pretty surprised. Some of their 12-volt tools are more powerful than my 20-volt tools, and so I've been very happy with their overall performance. But, the price-wise, they are about on par with a, 20-volt tool. So I think most people are just going to overlook them and go straight to the 20-volt lineup because, higher volts, more power, which is not technically wrong, but sometimes when you're comparing a 12-volt brushless tool versus a 20-volt brush tool, the 12-volt tool will still win out over the 20-volt brushed tool. So it just depends. This was the tool I was going to be reviewing. Quick review. I love it. It's awesome. I've been using it for a year now. Don't really have any complaints other than the fact that the bit holder drops bits. But, even over on Slick Deals, most of the things have just disappeared. Now, the one retailer that still seems to be carrying a lot of these tools is Menards. Menards has a little bit better relationship, or most of their tools are actually sold by Chevron or Chevron or however you however you pronounce their name. And, they still have quite a few Skil tools in stock. But some of them are still got those clearance prices, such as the Skil 20-volt brushless 9 tool combo kit. It says normally the price is $349 and the sale price is $279. Skil says that this particular tool set should be sold for around $550. So it's already on discount and it's been discounted again. So I'm pretty sure that means that that's on clearance. And that was a pretty new tool kit that they had just started selling here fairly recently. This other tool kit, it's an older one, and it's also, it's brushless tools, I believe, for the most part. And it's also on, clearance. So, I do think that there are going to be several different tool kits that are priced to be cleared out of the brick and mortar shops, and they're not probably going to be restocking them. Now, some of their other tools do have large discounts, but they're not out of step of what other tools are currently costing in this market. So it might just be, they might still be carried, but I don't know. It just doesn't seem like some of these things are going to be continued on. Now, I mentioned earlier that I don't believe that this is going to be part of the corded tool lineup. I'm not seeing the major discounts on the corded tools like I am on the cordless tools. So I suspect that the Skil's cordless tools are going away, but the corded tools, such as their corded saws, their corded miter, table, band saws, circular saws, sanders, I think most of those will probably remain in production because they have a pretty good reputation and most people don't seem to have much of an issue with them, and I think they sell okay. But when it comes to their cordless tools, yeah, when you start discounting things by half price, that's not a good overall indication of the tool being the tool line surviving into the future. Now, like I said earlier, I think there are certain, if you were to look strictly at Menards, it doesn't appear like there's much going on unless you actually know what, Skil says some of their tools should be charged or what the cost of some of their tools should be. But there is one other little bit of circumstantial evidence here on Menards' website that I think is also a good indicator. It's that some of the outdoor tools they had, there's some of the pruning saws or some of the small chainsaws that they had that were fairly new to the market are now no longer being sold either. So they had one that had a telescoping handle, which was pretty cool. They no longer seem to have that one in stock. Now, Chevron, however you say, Chevron, whatever their name is, also makes Menards' Masterforce tool lineup, and you can see the DNA resemblance in a lot of these particular tools, especially when you compare them against, the Skil tools. But a lot of these particular tools don't have any discounts whatsoever on them, so I don't think that means that, Chevron or Carvon or whatever, Chevron, I think it's Chevron, is getting out of the tool making industry completely. They still make Ego, and I think they make the Cobalt cordless tools. I think that they're just axing, the Skil cordless tools, and I think that their attempt to get into the professional 24 lineup flex tools was a major flop, and they just are deciding to axe some of these divisions. So I think that these particular lineups are going away. So here's what I will say. I do think if you are in the market to get some more Skil batteries, if you're already in the Skil tool system, buy now, because there's no promise that these particular things are going to be available in the future. So I would highly recommend stocking up on official Skil batteries now. There are some third-party options that are available. I do not like using third-party batteries. I think that the battery life is never as good, and there is always the potential of them being a fire hazard because they're not properly built, and they're, usually they have somebody who should not be building a battery, designing and building the battery. I've had issues with third-party batteries, and so I'd never recommend them. I would always recommend recommend going with an official battery, or if you can, adapting batteries over from other brands via a third-party adapter. Not saying that that's always the best thing. You know, official battery is always the best, but right now that's really your only options. And unfortunately, I don't think there are any third-party adapters that allow you to use other 12-volt batteries on your 12-volt Skil tools. So, you know, it is what it is. I think the main driving factor behind all this will probably be the fact that, well, Amazon, Walmart, they've kind of completely killed the affordable tool market for most manufacturers out there, at least the big manufacturers. It's really hard to have a, you know, professional line tool when your competition are cheap throwaway 12-volt brushless tools that cost under $25. When, you know, a tool from a known brand costs you for about, you know, right now it's costing about $60 to $100 for a compact brushless drill. When your competition is literally, you know, a third of the price, you just can't compete against that, unfortunately. Of course, you really can't buy replacement batteries for those cheaper tools, but, you know, at the end of the day, most people don't care enough, or, you know, when they're, oh, my drill no longer works, I'm just going to throw away and buy another one. That's how the majority of people who aren't bought into a tool system kind of view it, and, you know, they're not going to go buy an official drill at that point. So, you know, I really think that the tool market is kind of shrinking, and when you couple it with all the retail theft that's going on, with all the, you know, inflation, the job market, AI, when you put everything into a, you know, pot, this is not a good indication of where the market is heading. And this really isn't going to be great for us consumers, because at the end of the day, you know, less big companies that are in the tool market means that the companies that are still in the tool market, they're going to jack their prices up. Last year when Walmart released their HyperTough 20-volt tools, I was really hoping that that would be a, you know, a indication that some of the tool prices might be coming down a little bit after the prices went up during COVID. But unfortunately, what seems to have happened is Walmart just jacked the prices up after a couple months on their tool lineup. And while they're still more affordable, I really don't think the build quality of a lot of the HyperTough tools is all that great. And I've definitely seen a lot of returns on some of these particular tools. So, you know, at the end of the day, I really would have preferred HyperTough leaving the market over Skil, which I'm actually a pretty big fan of their tools. So, you know, just another little bit of, you know, of an irritant. So at the end of the day, do I think Skil's power tool cordless lineup, their 12 and 20 volt system, is going away? I really do. I don't really see how they can continue on in the market by how everything's been going on, you know, just by what the market trends currently are. And so I suspect that, you know, in the next 2-3 months, you know, they'll pretty much be completely gone from most retailers. So if you are in the market to try to get your hands on a Skil tool, this will probably be the time to do it. And if you need more Skil batteries, unfortunately, I think this will be the only and best time for you to try to buy more batteries. So, you know, with that being said, this is kind of a downer of a video, but if you liked it, please like and subscribe, and hopefully the microphone worked better than the first 3 times I tried recording this video. So, with that being said, we will see you all next time. God bless.